So let's take a look at the pieces that we've built up to this point and take a look at the topology or the edge flow. So the pieces that we've built, for instance, the shirt and the pants, the topology kind of makes sense and fits with what it is that we're building. So the legs, pretty much they're cylinders, and so the topology follows that. So we've got edges flowing up from the top to bottom, and then edges going around the perimeter there. Okay, and it sort of makes sense, and it'll help when we actually deform because we know the knee's going to bend here, so we have geometry flowing in that direction. It's going to help the knee bend appropriately, and there's going to be bending here, so that's going to happen okay. Same thing with the arms. We've got topology that's flowing around the arm and then up and down the arm as well. Same thing with the body. So it gives a nice clean look, and it's going to deform okay when we actually start to rig and animate the characters because of the way that the limbs move. They're just going to move around, or they're going to bend. There's not going to be a lot of complex deformation going on with things like the limbs. The shoes may deform a little bit, but they're not going to be bending too much like the knee or the elbow would. Okay, same thing here. We've got geometry around the fingers where those are going to bend as well. Now for something like the face or the head, you can see we need to define the actual shape, but we also need it to be able to deform appropriately when rigging and animation occur. So let's take a look at a quick picture here. So this is just another character, and the wireframe you can see on top of our character. And so let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. So instead of the geometry flowing just down the surface and across the surface as we have with the body or the arms and the legs, you can see that there's a little bit of a difference. And up here it looks kind of the same. So it's coming down on the forehead and it's going across. Here is an area that's not going to really deform much. Now areas down here are going to deform a lot more, and they're going to deform in very specific ways. So what we want to do for the eyes, for instance, is to create an edge loop that's isolated around the eye. So you can see that there's actually a loop of faces starting on the outside of the eye, not just on the eyelid, but starting on the outside area here. And then we have loops coming around on the inside. And what this will allow us to do is animate the eyes opening and closing in a more realistic way, in an easier way. Okay, so think about this sort of mirroring the musculature of the face, where we've got muscles in radial patterns around these areas. Okay, it also allows us to add resolution to our eye if we need to add wrinkles to the eyelids or add thickness and things like that. It isolates that inside of this outer loop, so that if we had something that was just going straight across and we started adding a bunch of resolution, it's going to go across the surface the entire way, and we may not need it. So those loops also help us to isolate that geometry. Mainly it's for allowing for deformation to be appropriate to that area. Same thing with the mouth. So we're going to have a loop that's going to come around the mouth. You can see we have a little bit of detail crossing down. But for the most part, we've got this geometry flowing around from one side all the way to the other. And the same reason applies here, so that we can get nice clean deformations for this that kind of mimic the direction of the muscle flow on a real character's face. Okay. Another thing that we might notice is that we have edge loops flowing from the top of the nose behind the nostril down along this outer part of the sort of the smile line here. So we're going to have, we want to be able to create that smile crease. If we have our geometry just flowing up and down and across, when the character smiles, it's going to be very difficult to get that nice line there showing where that fold happens if we don't have an edge loop there. So if we want to have that nice wrinkle, we want to have an edge loop there, and we want to have at least a couple so that we can define that sort of bulging flesh that bunches up here as well. Okay, and also we want to have a loop kind of coming in and defining the jawline and maybe coming up and across, and you can get a little indication of that here. Okay, now the topology that you create for the face, they're all going to be maybe a little bit different, but they're going to have some similarities. You want to have the loops around the mouth and around the eye. Typically you want to have loops coming down from the top of the nose down across the cheek and around and down under, so you can get that sort of deformation. And you want to have sufficient topology in here, so when you smile you can bulge that out, kind of preserve the volume there and create the bunching of the flesh. And then you want to have obviously the loops around your eyes so that you can create enough resolution there to be able to close, open, do expressions and things like that. You can see here as well in the brow that we've got that geometry in to actually be able to move the brow up and down. You could probably even use a little bit more resolution in here to create some bunching for that flesh up the top of the nose. All right. Now, as it starts to get down into the neck, you start to get into more of the straight up and down topology that we looked at earlier with the arms, where it's just nice and clean going down the neck and then across to be able to define that shape and deform it. Where you run into the specialized topologies really up in the facial area. Okay. So having said that, let's go ahead in the next lesson and take a look at a different way of building in that topology. Because if we start from a cube, you can certainly do it that way, but if you start from an edge basis, that will maybe make it make a little bit more sense to us as we do that, and then you'll have another kind of tool in your tool belt that if you need to build something like that, you can do it using a different method. All right, so let's go ahead in the next lesson and take a look at starting to build some of the facial topology using a different type of method. So we'll go ahead and do that next.